Hi, Colin.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you? I'm excited to have you here.
I'm very excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a very long time.
Me too. Thank you. Welcome to AVENUE.B. AVENUE.B stands for deliberately taking a more human-first approach to strategy and is a place for creatives, strategists, and innovators like yourself who are building brand-consumer relationships by understanding people more closely, whether that's emotionally or socially or cognitively. Today, I'm here with Colin Rocker, career educator and content creator. He's a LinkedIn top voice and Forbes 30 Under 30, and founder of his own personal brand, CareerColin, and the community event series For the First, which is a group of professionals who are carving their own path or doing something the first of its kind. Today, we'll be talking about how to design your own personal brand through recognizing your own skills and the value you bring into the world and your own presence, and how IRL in real life community events can only amplify that. So I'd love to start by having you introduce your two brands, CareerColin and FTF, kind of their overlap, and what kind of emotional needs these firsts carry that can be solved by a community like yours?
That's a great question. I think, first of all, again, thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to the show, and I love the way you run it and how much research and effort and care you put into putting these shows together. But yeah, I would say the first brand, CareerColin, was started out of burnout and boredom. I was a consultant working at Deloitte, 60, 70-hour weeks, tons of travel. That all ground to a halt during COVID. And I was really just looking for a better way to express myself and what I was feeling at work and the things I had learned, but more so just to have a creative expression. And so that was the first brand. And that grew over the years into something that I honestly, greater than anything I could have ever planned it to be. And along the way, I was just looking for better ways to differentiate my content and my voice, because as you know, there are thousands of people talking about these topics on the internet, but how do you really separate that or separate yourself? And so I started to talk about my journey and my origin story and where I came from. And so this whole notion of being a first generation in corporate America came from a deep reflection on my own professional journey, and wanting to take that into a physical space is how I kind of came to the idea For the First.
So since you've been doing online for almost 6 years and offline community for 1 year, have you noticed any differences in human behavior or brand engagement where people see you as a real human being now? And do they behave differently online now? Do they behave differently offline? What kind of makes offline special to explore?
Yeah. That's such an interesting question, because it's been really surprising to me how people have engaged with me at my events after seeing my content, right? It's kind of funny. Every week, every month we have an event, right? And so whatever content I'm posting that week that has gone viral or that's gotten a lot of views, I literally will hear people bring that up at an event, right? I just moved a few weeks ago and I posted a video that got some decent engagement, and at that next meetup, people were coming up to me and saying, "Oh, how was the move? How's the apartment? How does your son like his room?" And so it's been really funny to get that immediate kind of feedback and engagement on the stuff I'm posting, whereas on a regular week it kind of feels like you're just sending that content out into the void. But it also, for me, I'm in a position where I can source ideas and talk to my actual community, and I feel like it's a rare opportunity to directly interface with the people who are watching and engaging with my content. And so it's become a really big, goldmine for me, honestly, for ideas and expressions of emotions and challenges people are facing that I can then turn around into content and newsletter articles and things I say on podcasts that really help them. And so it's been this really cool kind of feedback loop for me as well.
Okay, yeah. I read somewhere that 77% of people trust a brand more if they engage with it in real life. So whether that's a beauty product truck or a networking event like yours or a branded run club or whatever it is, I think people just want to see the product in real life with people that are working for the community. And it's interesting that you say that it has a ripple effect for your own content, because I think it's also a ripple effect of AI visibility, because there's so much content volume, especially in creator networks, who are all posting their own takeaways from your event or posting a different quote from the evening. So I'm thinking IRL events are also going to be more visible in AI because of the volume of everyone posting.
They're going to be so important. I mean, I always say like we're transitioning to like a trust economy, right? With a world where, like you said, with AI, so much of the things we see on the internet can be generated, and it's not just text, it's photos, it's videos, it's people's likenesses, right, being stolen and used in nefarious ways, or just misleading ways at least. And so I think for a brand, or as an individual, for a personal brand, it's going to be so much more important to be able to identify ways that you can increase the amount of trust you have with your audience, because it's good for you as an individual in terms of how you can, like I said, interface with the people who are consuming what you are creating. And then for brands, it just creates a much, like you said, like that 77%, that's in our deck, like we use that and we use that stat as well. But like that's how brands are building much deeper connections in a world where everything can be faked and misled and blown out of proportion, with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, recently you've been talking about outgrowing your initial frame.
Yes.
In the context of rebranding FTF. And I thought about it, and to me, it's almost like an expansion of the self without blueprint.
Ooh.
So you already start without the blueprint, which comes with loads of anxiety and uncertainty. But everyone does have this kind of mental frame or mental model of where it could go based on your experience and your strengths. And then once you outgrow that based on like new awards that you weren't expecting, or new certifications or collaborations that are in different industries that you weren't expecting, I can only imagine that it's a very double the uncertainty or exponential uncertainty that comes towards you. So my question is, on the one hand, how do you navigate outgrowing your initial frame? Did you have like a milestone you were working towards that now makes it worth an investment in a rebrand, or is it a gut feeling that you had?
That's such a powerful question, Gina. I think one of the realizations about myself that kind of prompted that piece of content I think you're referring to is I'm constantly reconciling with the idea that I genuinely think that I think too small, right? Because in this world of algorithmic content and things can go viral and things can blow up, and you never know if you publish something, whether that's an article, whether that's a video, whether that's your thoughts in a 10-second tweet, where that thing where that thing can end up and who that can affect, and then the ripple effect of that coming back to you, right? And the vast majority of everything that I've done in the awards I've done in the rooms I've been in has been like not on the vision board. I mean, for me, it's like if I can afford my rent in Manhattan, buy, a few pieces of clothing, enjoy time spent with my family, right? Like those are my goals. And I feel like using content as an opportunity engine, I've learned that I'm really bad at predicting what's going to happen if I keep showing up in an authentic way. So for me, putting time and energy and motion into that opportunity engine is how these things are coming to me. But I've sort of had to change how I set goals, because I've learned that if I set some revenue goal and then I 2x it, or if I say I want to win this award and I don't get it, but then I get this other award that may be more prestigious I didn't even know was available, right? It's like you kind of have to rethink how you're approaching certain goals. And that even rethinks the kind of content you make, right? Because certain opinions may get you in certain rooms, right? And so you have to think about, what room is my content or is my brand leading me into, and do I want to be in that space in the first place?
So do you still say no to some rooms?
Oh, hold on. That was a quick question. All the time. I would say now it's probably about a 50-50, honestly, in terms of the opportunities that are coming my way, where I think it's a great thing and I love the brand and I'm excited to work with them. And that's it. Like it's like a hell yes, or it's a hell no, right? And so I think I'm at a point, and I'm grateful to be here, but like it's gonna fall on either of those things. And so I have to really think about I don't do any lukewarm yeses anymore. And I'm grateful to be in that spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the other side of expansion would be reduction. And in design theory, there's something called essentialism or like minimalism. Basically, the most famous example is like a remote control in design. You would take away all the buttons that you don't need in user testing.
I think I
And
need
the
that for my
same
kid. He could use a remote. Yeah.
The same applies in famous examples like Michelangelo's statue, where he said, "I simply removed everything that wasn't David." So
I like
my
that.
kind of esoteric question is, have you ever thought of your brands as removing everything that isn't Colin to be authentic?
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's such a good question. I think that it's definitely a process that I've been on. I don't think I'm there yet, but I do think that is the goal, right? Like ideally the content strategy should be to be myself, right? And so I'm trying to get to a place where I can consistently create out of a voice that feels like original and true to me, that does the things that I need it to do for the business in terms of the content to be shared and viewed and engaged with. And so I'm still on that journey. And I think the thought that's sort of upstream of that I'm thinking about now is it all goes back to self-awareness. Like, how much do I know who or what Colin even is to then say like what is or is not me, right? I kind of just twisted my brain a little bit, but yeah,
Me too.
I want to think about that. That's a great question.
Because everyone keeps saying you want to be an authentic brand, or
that's right,
or everyone is trying to get there.
Yeah.
So it was like, what flows from Colin into CareerColin? Was it deliberate of you to have like a CareerColin and have that separate from your personal life?
Okay, so that question I can't answer. I think in the beginning, I was giving career advice because I reverse engineered what people were coming to me for advice for. And so my friends in college and in my early professional life were coming to me for advice that I feel like I could give. And so that's why I shared it. What I didn't realize at the time was that I got good at giving career advice because nobody ever gave me any, right? And so that was kind of how I discovered this whole idea of being like a first generation in corporate America. And that's where I learned, like, that's where that expertise came from. And so again, it all goes back to self-awareness of like knowing. I always tell people, you don't like discover or like create your mission or your passion. You have to remember it, right? And so it's like, for me, remembering the fact that I was at a place when I was 18, 20, 22, where I was constantly put in rooms with people who, based on their upbringings, may have been a mile or two ahead of me. And I had to create my own ways of making relationships, I had to create my own ways of learning certain skills, and being able to distill that down into a video that can then go on social. That's a skill, right? But I had to sort of remember that that's what I was actually doing. It's not just about networking and job search. It's about navigating that journey as a first.
Okay. Last time we spoke, we talked about your presence is the product.
Yeah.
And I went and thought about what presence means to me. I think your presence is your natural plus your educated plus your experience-based skills.
Okay.
That you bring in as a complex human being into the workplace or into normal life. And that is applied then to your customer's problem at one point in time when they actually think of you and your name as the answer. So it's kind of like a whole circle.
I think you've thought about that more than I have. That's awesome.
But it just means that you bring your whole self into work, and it's actually a powerful thing that you have more skills, that you are also a tennis player, you're also a dad, you're also a friend, you're also a son. And not only like the job description that is the corporate way. So I think it's very important to also take into account that your online visibility is kind of your ticket to be the answer, because you have to be in the mental consideration set of people to actually think of your name in that problem. So how would you go about uncovering your own or someone else's natural strengths that make them almost irreplaceable to, let's say, an AI or another competitor?
I would say your hidden skill set lies in the compliments you no longer pay attention to because you get them so often. And so it all goes back to this idea of like remembering what you are good at, not creating, right? And so I literally tell people this, like, find a friend, a coworker you trust, a member of your family that you're close to, and literally ask them to say, like, what do you come to me for advice for? What do you think I'm good at? Or, just again, do the thought exercise of pen and paper it and just say, like, over the last, 10 to 20 years of my life, what are people consistently complimenting me on or coming to me for advice for? And those are clues Probably not the exact answer, but it's a clue in terms of what that special thing could be. And then you have to figure out, how do I want to share this in a way that's novel, right? For me, I mean, short form vertical video, right? And now Substack newsletters, but I think for someone else, like that's where the experimentation comes in, where it's like, what medium do I need to choose to be the most effective at delivering that message, right? And so I think that's how, I kind of did it by accident. Like I've made over close to 3,000 videos at this point over the last 6 years, and so I think over that time you kind of iterate based on the feedback you're getting from the platform. But I think for someone starting out, that's how I'd start.
So for someone starting out, I keep getting these videos in my feed that you should be the niche.
Sure. Yeah.
For someone starting out, I mean, gathering from your own experience or from people saying what you're good at or what they come to you for, should you start as kind of an expert track and then expand, or should you just show up as you are and just hope that being a tennis player and an educator and a storyteller will be enough to
be honest, I don't like that advice. I think it's very good advice for people who are maybe advanced practitioners to maybe then take and apply to what they're doing. But for your example, right? If I'm a tennis player, I could talk about my journey getting into tennis as maybe an outsider. I could talk about my fitness and health and eating habits that make me good at tennis. I can tell you how to become a better tennis player, obviously in a more like amateur rec setting, right? I could talk about the business of tennis and how tennis players make money. There are so many different ways the tree can fall from tennis. And I think that it's confusing to people to just sort of say like, show up and be yourself, because the creators that usually say that, I think are maybe sometimes unaware, or maybe, choosing not to say that like your personality and the way you deliver content in and of itself can be an approach to like that personal brand, right? Like there are people on the internet where they can talk about geopolitical conflicts, personal finance, the last date they went on, the last thing they cooked themselves for dinner, but they're doing it in a way that is so entertaining and engaging and funny and, meant to be sort of shared and clipped, right? That is their niche in terms of their personality and how they're delivering that content. And so I feel like what is a much better sort of solution, or what is a much better way of approaching that, is I think just thinking about the things that you've had to develop yourself to become who you are, right? Or something it's got to be a mix, right? I think it's a good mix of like what you genuinely enjoy, because you kind of have to create like, if you're I'm sure you're familiar with like the concept of like a positive feedback loop, right? If you're not getting positive feedback from the creation of the content, you'll never create it and share it in a way that people will, encourage you to make more. But then you also have to have the loop of like, people have to get value out of the video, but that doesn't mean education, right? Entertainment is value, inspiration, nostalgia, motivation. These are all valuable things, right? It's not just education. I think whatever feels natural to you is good. And I think, a way to make that more clear is reverse engineer your own behavior. What are you watching on Instagram? What are you watching on LinkedIn? What videos are you clicking on YouTube, right? And try to reverse engineer that, because odds are, you can start to wave off of, these audiences when you make something similar. And then eventually, this happened to me where you end up in a room where you're now collaborating with that person off of, something that's somewhat similar, but obviously finding your own unique voice. Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that it always has to bring a value, because another quote that I always hear is that value-based community is now the new era of brands, and that belonging is the new currency. Do you think there's a next step to belonging? Because I don't think that's necessarily the core that everyone should be striving towards. Right. I think it's more like a loop, like you said, between value and belonging, because value is always going to be the logical part and belonging is the emotional part. So if you either get people who think very rationally or people who say, oh, I actually like these people in the community, I'm going to stay, you can attract people and kind of, instead of a funnel, have like a continuous loop of customers that keep coming back.
That's right. I think that's, it's brilliant, because, as anyone, if you want to do this for the long term, right? Like I think I've made the decision to do, it's you're going to have an element of churn to your audience as well, right? Whereas, you know, they've learned all they can from you, right? And they're in a position where they want to go off and do something different, or their life circumstances change and now they don't necessarily need your content. But to directly, you know, answer what you were talking about as like belonging not be the end all be all, I think that's so smart. And you have to like accept that as someone building a brand, that people may need you for a season of their life and then need that like bounce back, right? Like I'm sure there are people that you follow where it's like, you know, oh man, this person's like the bomb, right? And then you sort of fall out and it's like, like their content's okay. Maybe even unfollow them. But then months, years, decades later, something hits in your inbox or you see this weird video where someone tags them and it's like, oh, like, let me see what they're up to, right? And then there's this feedback loop of consistency of like, oh, they're still doing this, but like now they're in a different city, or now they've changed their business, or now they're in a relationship that I didn't know about before. And so I think that's like the benefit of that. But I think as someone building a brand, you have to like, you'll always have that churn of people like falling out and then coming back in, you know, to whatever you're doing. Yeah, you may need to ask that question in another way, honestly. I don't think I've answered it yet, though.
It's almost, I mean, it's always like a philosophical question.
Yeah.
It's almost like personal brands are like human relationships where you maybe reconnect with someone from high school years later and kind of the relationships always go like this, right? And sometimes they fall apart. And as long as you're staying authentic to the content that you're creating at that moment in time with the best that you can give, I think that's the way you should be thinking about authentic branding.
One of the best pieces of advice I ever got from someone was like, you can't take them with you, right? And it's like whatever you want to, you know, when you want to make a shift or when you feel drawn to or when you need to because your circumstances changed, understand that shift may open you up to an audience, but there may be a portion of what you have already built that you cannot take with you, you know, when you make a certain decision, right? Like when I, you know, decided to, after a layoff, to not pursue full-time employment again and say, this is the decision I'm going to do. And I'm not, you know, my content is not about how to make content full-time, but like my life circumstance is very different, you know, and I like to update my audience in certain moments in terms of like what I'm doing in my new career as a creator and all this stuff. Like that's a moment where you lose, right? I think, I mean, women in particular, I think have it really tough when they make a big life circumstance change that they're willing to share on social media. Like maybe they're, you know, now engaged to be married, maybe they're about to have a baby. Like I've seen that happen with a lot of people, women that are maybe known as like, you know, more knowledge-based creators, and people say, oh, you're just going to make motherhood content now, and that, you know, it's not even true, right? People can be brutal, right? And so I think it's like just knowing that like, you know, you can't take them all with you, but you also don't owe anyone an explanation. Yeah.
Do you think there will be a future of an omnipresent personal brand era where everyone who is a therapist or a school teacher or a PT will step up with their own personal brand, collaborating with others and kind of have this nonlinear life? What do you think could be a radical future? Like when I thought about this, a radical future could be moving from childhood college to corporate to homeschooled, and then have like a tax and life skills school, or have mini certifications instead of a full degree. What do you think if everyone in our world would suddenly start this like nonlinear career? What would the world look like?
I mean, to be honest, Gina, I think we're already in that era, you know. I think first of all, I would say for anyone watching, whether you make content or not, you already have a personal brand, right? You already have an opinion or a thought or a feeling or a skill set associated with who you are, whether or not you choose to share it or engage with it or agree with it. It exists, right? I do think, and I do think now, like culturally and socially, like you've definitely seen the stuff that I've seen where it's like, whether you want to be a full-time creator or not, increasing your visibility is the gateway to opportunity, especially even going back to one of the first things we talked about with AI. I'm very close to how that is changing, in a lot of ways making worse the whole notion of a job search, right? In terms of, you know, you are now more than ever just like a number in an algorithmic, you know, process, unless you can create something to rise above, right? Like in my last 2 job searches before I'd gone full time, my content was a part of both of them, where I literally had the hiring manager or whoever I was interviewing with literally pull up my Instagram and ask me about specific videos or specific takes I had made. Genuinely,
But that's a good approach. I like
it's a great approach. It's a great approach. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
making career content, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I think maybe I had an unfair advantage if I was, I don't know, shooting dogs out of a cannon or something. Like I maybe would have had a different experience, but I think it allows people, again, like to have a parasocial relationship with you before they ever meet you. And so they know what your voice sounds like. They have an idea of what your personal sense of style is, what your thoughts are on certain things. And it all goes back to this form of like, your ability to create relationships is how you will stand out in an age where it seems like everything is being commodified by AI and advanced technology, right? I use AI every day, but it will never be the thing that I use to create relationships with people, right? And I think we're already in that personal brand era, and you and I and everyone else around us in our orbits can see the benefits of creating that and stepping out to do so. So yeah, I would say we're definitely already there. And ideally, what I think this can lead to, this has been I won't say a spiritual process, but it's definitely been a psychological one, right? You have to, the idea of putting your face on camera, right? Let's talk about that, right? Like getting used to how your voice actually sounds, getting used to how your face actually moves, right? It's like these are at the very, very onset things I had to deal with, making the first 10 to 100 videos. And so I think going through that process and then like, oh, like this take I had, people don't agree with, or this thing I believe in, I guess people don't care about because of how it performed on social, right? Which is its own thing. But it's like the vision, if you're asking me for this omnipresent era, as people start to opt into it, is that people just get a lot more comfortable with who they actually are. And they do the work to discover, how do I feel about work, about identity, about community, about philosophy? It's like when you have to show up in a way that's consistent and share what you think, you got to know what you think, And so I think that's been definitely a journey that I've been on. And I think it's, that's the fear that I think holds on to people back. It's the fear of judgment, because to stand out, you actually have to have a take, right? That people may, fall on either side of. Yeah.
Be polarizing.
Yeah.
You might be a little biased to this last question because you named it CareerColin. But do you think career or work or a job is still the right word for what we're doing, or should it be more like value creation, collaboration, mission, since now everyone has like a little bit more flexibility in doing what they actually can or want? Because jobs has like a
job to me, I've really never liked the word job. That feels very industrial
heavy.
Revolution, like making widgets, smashing rocks with hammers. Like that's like what a job reminds me of. I love the idea of the word career, but I feel like the definition is definitely changing, right? Where people are choosing or just becoming more open and familiar with the nonlinear path, right? And the nonlinear individual path, right? Because even like what people I feel like may or may not like understand with that as like your nonlinear path and my nonlinear path will look completely different. So we can say, okay, we're going to, throw the career ladder away and like build our own paths, but like that really means like build our own paths, right? But that opens up opportunities that only you can do. And that's something I've seen really explode for me in the last year, where it's like the partnerships I'm able to work with and some of the speaking opportunities I've got coming up, they feel like they were built for me, right? But to your point, that individual doesn't get to see you and know that you would be a great fit for that if you're not sharing it in the first place. And so I think that's what people are understanding with their career. And I don't necessarily think that the future will mean everyone is a full-time, the bulk or majority of my income is derived from how I show up online kind of creator. But I think the idea of I'm going to increase my visibility by, I don't know, maybe going to more events, maybe being more active in my company Slack channel, maybe publishing a newsletter that's so niche it's only really read by people in the industry. Like people think that like you've got to be me or someone like, big with a massive audience that does all this like influencer marketing creator stuff. And it's like, that's my approach, but it may not be yours. But I think there's a way of more visibility if you're doing it in a way that isn't, off-putting and disingenuous to who you are, I think is always going to be a positive. Yeah.
So visibility or personal brand is something that people already carry, but it's like, do you opt in to actually using it and taking advantage?
Absolutely. Yeah. Will you have, I think, excuse me, geez. I say it comes down to courage and consistency. I think if you have the courage to stand up for what you, again, are already putting into the hearts and minds of the people you interact with, and you can do that consistently in a format that, creates that feedback loop that we talked about, like that's how you win, right? Yeah. I think it's the courage to stand up and be known for something that people may or may not agree with, and then the consistency to do it. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Colin. It's always such a pleasure talking to you. I'm very excited for the future of CareerColin and the first.
Me too.
And hoping our paths will cross again in the future.
They definitely will. Thank you, Gina.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Awesome.